Welcome everybody to another interview here. We have Rachel from the UK, and she has MKD or HIDS as it used to be called, and who actually it's the same thing that our interview with Alexei, his mother, Ludmilla, we spoke to yesterday. You can check out that interview. I'll post that right up there. It's going to go that way. That way. That's where the eye is going to be. Little eye is going to be, and you can click that if you want to. But you should stay here and watch this interview with Rachel. She helps run an organization in the UK to help autoinflammatory patients as well. It's great. It's great to see you again, and I'm sorry you're feeling under the weather, but thank you for coming to share your story. Because I mean,
Thank you for having me.
of course. My mom is actually. I don't know if I told you this last time we spoke on Zoom, but my mom is English, and she's from originally from Surrey County, from Woking,
Alright, not
from
too far
Woking.
away.
So
I'm in Oxfordshire.
okay, okay. So I have cousins in the UK and stuff. I haven't seen them in years over there. Some of them come to the States to see us, but so I have a connection to the UK. So it's always great to speak to someone from the UK, and unfortunately, someone who's got an autoinflammatory condition. It has to be that way. But um, tell us a bit about your journey. I'd say of where you started and when you were diagnosed and when symptoms started and all that.
So, I said in chat earlier that my mum knew I was troubled when I was born.
Yep.
I was literally born with fever and jaundice.
That's crazy.
Then, I think I was like 3 months old. They thought I had an infection. I had like a rash, fever. So they put me on antibiotics, and within a few days, it started to improve.
Oh,
So they rather than doing cultures, because they don't seem to do cultures that frequently over here.
interesting.
Yes. Um, so they just put it down to recurrent infections for a long time. And I think it was until my brother came along and he was fine. My brother's never had anything
Oh,
whatsoever. So my mum was saying, hang on a minute, why is this child getting so ill a lot of the time, but this one's fine? And I wasn't really walking by the norm age either. Um, I was talking, most of my development was fine, but yeah, question stuff like I wasn't walking properly. I need splints to help me. During flare ups, my joints would get really, really swollen.
oh,
So my mum would have to carry me up and down the
oh,
stairs all the time. So we had a stair put in.
oh, yeah.
And then my mum wasn't able to work either, so that had a huge implication on finances because she was looking
Sure.
after me.
Yeah.
My poor brother passed from pillar to post. He got shoved over the grandparents. I was rushed into hospital. So I think he grew up feeling like he was a spare part quite a lot of the time.
Oh.
But he's fine. He's 6'5" and a bit, I think, with size 13 feet and healthy. Whereas I'm 5 foot, very small feet and unhealthy.
Well, I mean, you say that he felt sort of like a spare part, but often find, I know this is the case for me, and like we just spoke to Monica and she talked about her kids, siblings oftentimes don't feel slighted by their very sick sibling. They feel more concerned and worried. So, how did he? Was he like that when you were kids? Was he more like concerned about you when you got sick, or was he?
Um, well, there was a lot going on around, I think he was 2.5, I was 5, nearly 6. Our parents divorced.
Okay.
and that had quite a big impact on both of us.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time mothering him when we went to the other parents' house.
Got you.
So it wasn't. I didn't sense that he was over worried, but I guess he wasn't at the hospital a lot of the time either, so he didn't see the trauma of it.
Yeah.
Which is good in some ways because he was kind of sheltered from it and didn't have such an anxiety. And it's also something that, because I'm quite old school in the diagnosis process, it's not something that was really discussed much about as a family unit.
Got you.
It was sort of not. I wouldn't say it was brushed under the carpet, but it was always reactive to a crisis.
Oh, okay.
And in between that, it was just literally trying to enjoy life
and try and stay quote normal.
Yes.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. I compare it to experiences of others these days, and I think there has been a social shift.
Yes.
In that siblings are very much included in everything. May even be possibly screened themselves, whereas my brother wasn't at all, because they just deemed him he was fine, so therefore we don't need to.
Yep.
I'm still not clear as to whether my parents were tested or not.
Huh. You would think that they would want to figure out what side of the family it came from.
Yes. But if you were to ask medical professionals, they'd say, well, both parents are carriers, and therefore, you know. Which I doubt very much. I think it was just a spontaneous thing for me.
Huh.
There's no signs to say that either parent is carrier. No family.
That's crazy. So, and that shows you just how weird and hard to diagnose and just complicated these diseases are, because no family history at all. How are you supposed to diagnose something like that? I mean, I understand it because I'm adopted and I was diagnosed with FMF. So, you know, but it's crazy that you're not adopted, and I feel like I've taught when people I spoke to yesterday dealt with the same thing, that no family history of things or anything, and it's why I think part of it is it's expensive to get tested, because if there's no reason to, the insurance companies won't pay for it, and so you have to put it out of pocket.
When I was a child, testing wasn't available.
Yeah, it wasn't a thing. You were only getting clinically diagnosed. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, autoinflammatory didn't exist until I was. Yeah. Well, technically, I think mevalonate kinase deficiency was acknowledged in 1984.
Okay.
So I wasn't even born by then. So 2 years later, I came along, and they still didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
So
did they call it a tropical disease back then in the UK?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what they called it for us. Yeah, tropical disease, infectious disease. Yeah. So yeah, it was.
How I traveled to a country.
Yep.
Yeah. And then they started questioning whether I had Still's disease, because a lot of the symptoms on a textbook were very Still's-like, I suppose. But there was no definitive test to prove that it was Still's disease either. So they went with Still's disease as my childhood diagnosis until I was referred to a specialist centre for children. And they did a lot of discussions with all the hospitals that I'd been visiting. And they took my history and they sort of said, oh, okay, we think we might be on to something here. At 8, the specialist centre suspected that I had something like an autoinflammatory condition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There was no testing. There was no treatment.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So 8 years later, so I was 16, they finally decided we needed to get genetic testing done.
Because it was
But
then.
it
It was
wasn't
around by
available.
then. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
around by. It was finally around by then. Yeah.
But it wasn't available in the UK.
Really?
Yeah. So this was 2003.
There's only So Germany, Israel, the United States. Where'd you have to go?
They took skin biopsy
Okay.
and they sent it over to the Netherlands.
Oh, the net. Interesting.
So they diagnosed me.
Huh. The Dutch
They then
diagnosis.
sent all the information back to the centre over here. I don't know if I'm allowed to say specific areas, but
You can say the area of the. Just don't give the
it's in
name or.
London.
Okay. There you go.
It's the
I
big
think London's
international
big enough. You
hospital,
can
you know.
say it's in London. I think there's plenty of medical facilities in London, and they're not going to be able to figure out which one it was. Someone's going to have like one of those boards with the string
Yeah.
attached, trying to figure out where did Rachel go in London. I'm going to figure it
Everywhere.
out. Yep.
I could actually have about 50 pins on the map.
Yeah. Take him off the scent of the trail.
Yeah. They found a researcher that was up, I think he was in Scotland somewhere at the time. He was studying my condition.
Oh.
And he was involved in the diagnosis with working with Netherlands. I think he was doing his PhD at the time. So he studied. I called him a vampire when I was about 16 because all he wanted was my blood.
That's fantastic.
And I just randomly one day said, well, what are you going to do doing with it? And I was then given his email. So for a long time, we were going backwards and forwards in an email. He wanted to know how I was getting on.
Sure, yeah.
I started on a drug called Enbrel.
I've heard of it.
Etanercept, I think. That didn't do anything whatsoever. Then the trial for anakinra came out. I was put onto that. And they started me on a pediatric dose because I was technically still under pediatric.
Yep.
Even though I was an older teen.
Mm-hmm.
And then they soon discovered that they'd have to put me on an adult dose because the child dose wasn't doing anything.
Well, at that point, your body's developed enough to need adult medicine. I mean, 17, 18-year-olds, you're going to give them adult doses of medicine normally,
Exactly, and I've gone all that time without anything.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so you needed something a little stronger than just a child dose. That's very true. Good point.
So I think that was about 2005. The diagnosis being confirmed by the genetics at that point. And I was still in a lot of hospital with it. I was still getting a lot of recurrent infections that were actual infections. And it was noted on my genetic report that I had an unusual presentation of downregulation in T cells, which meant I was more susceptible to infections. But I think now when we look at it, MKD patients do seem to be picking up more infections than what they first thought. Which I don't know enough about other autoinflammatory conditions in terms of the history of infection, whether it's common or not. I know that once you take biologics, your immune system is suppressed somewhat. So there is that increased risk. But yeah, it's a whirlwind. So 2005 to 2013, I then switched to tocilizumab, which is Rotemra.
Okay.
Yeah, anakinra wasn't doing anything by that point for me.
It's got to be so frustrating, medicine after medicine not helping.
So that was the third drug. I'd already tried colchicine as well as a child, and I was really ill with that, abdominal issues. But now looking back, I think maybe the symptoms of my abdominal issues were more MKD related than the actual colchicine. So 2013 I started tocilizumab, and then I was fine actually. It worked really well when I had IV access.
Oh, okay.
So they did that every 4 weeks.
How long? How long did you have to sit there? Was it a quick infusion or?
No, it was a couple of hours
Oh,
on the day
wow.
ward. So I'd have the whole day off from uni or whatever at the time. But it was enough, the fact that I was at university for 5 years, part-time. And I actually didn't miss that much time at all from my studies. Compared to when I was at school as a child, I think I did pretty well when I was at uni. As soon as I left uni, I started my first full-time job. And they put me onto the pen injections rather than the infusions.
Mm-hmm.
And things started going downhill from there.
Oh my gosh.
And it was crazy because the pen injections were every 2 weeks rather than the infusions every 4 weeks. So you'd think that maybe it would be more beneficial.
But I think subcutaneous and infusion are very different processes of the body.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. So I stayed on it for a while after that. And then 2018 came, and I went on a trip of a lifetime holiday with one of my friends. And we went out. That I met at university, she lives in Norway.
Oh, cool.
So I flew out to Norway.
Oh.
And then together we flew out to the States.
Nice.
To stay with another friend who was in Rhode Island at the time.
Okay.
Had the most incredible holiday ever. Coming back from America, I went back into Norway, and I was ill.
The stress of travel. Travel.
As soon as I landed, my friend got me into the wheelchair off the aeroplane, and she said I could barely string a sentence together.
Wow.
She was so stressed as well, bless her, because she had to manage all the luggage.
Oh, my.
When we got back from the airport, we had to get a train to her apartment, and one of my luggages got stuck on the train. We left it behind.
Oh, no.
And it had all my medication in it.
Oh, no. Oh, I've left luggage before too, but not with medication in it. No.
They were so good though. They put it on the next train back.
Oh, wow.
So we managed to get it back.
Those Norwegians.
Yeah. Oh, they're incredible over there.
Yeah, efficient.
But then I ended up in hospital over there.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Feeling like that.
For two weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And do you know what? It was a small community hospital, and it was the best treatment I've ever had.
You hear that, folks? Go to Norway for treatment.
Amazing views. Wow. I was like, this is the best therapy ever. And they didn't know anything, obviously, about my condition. Yeah. So immediately they rung their rare disease centre and they said, look, we've got this patient from the UK. What do we do? I gave them contact details for my team over here. I don't think there was no communication there, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm not
surprised. So, the rare disease centre over there said, this is what she needs. This is what you need to treat her with. This is the dose.
Wow.
And 2 weeks later, they got me fit enough to fly back.
And then did you go back to the normal infusions or?
No, I stayed on the injection because the infusions they stopped doing them
offering them. That's why. Yep, insurance and companies and it's all controlled.
Well, we didn't. we don't have the insurance issue over here because we've got the National
Oh, you
Health
got
Service.
NHS. Yeah, it's all NHS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it still
It's
creates issues.
yes, it's kind of the same thing. Just it's one organization rather than 50
Yeah.
million of not 50 million. Obviously, it's an exaggeration, but a bunch of them. So
Yeah.
there's still all the red tape and the claims and stuff like that. Except your claims are all done through government.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. So I ended up with I flew back, and then a week later I was readmitted to hospital with suspected
Oh
pancreatitis.
my gosh.
My GP was like, I think you should go to hospital, and I was like, oh no, just I
Ah,
need some
yeah, the
medication.
typical
Fine,
autoinflammatory
just
patient.
I've
No, I'll
been
be
in hospital.
good.
No, he wasn't having a ball of it. He said, look,
No.
I think you're that ill. I'm about to ring an ambulance for you.
Yeah,
And I was like, okay, I'll go, but you don't need to ring an ambulance.
I'll,
My
yeah,
friend
I'll
was
do it
waiting.
myself. I'll do it myself. Stop it.
So my friend took me in, and they did all the usual scans and everything like that for pancreatitis, bloods. My CRP was through the roof, as you would expect with a flare.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it was 2 days later, I started developing a sore throat. And I knew it was an infection coming. I absolutely knew. I know the difference between a flare and an
Oh
infection.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And I told them, I told them, pure as, just, I've got an infection coming in my throat. Swab it if you don't believe me. They didn't swab it. They ignored me. I was still having this flare up from Norway as well.
The combination flare and infection.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then I ended up with sepsis.
Oh my gosh! The fact that you're still sitting here talking to us is awesome, amazing.
I think I'm a cat with 9 lives, really. So, yes, from that, in 2018, it gave me a bit of a post-traumatic stress disorder, I think.
Oh, I understand that. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. And then discussions were around, I think, the funding application for Ilaris canakinumab on a governmental level had gone in in 2018, and it got denied.
Oh.
So I couldn't start it, and we were desperate to switch me onto it at that point. So in 2020, they went again, but they had to make changes to the original policy because, you've got first line drugs, second line drugs, third line drugs. You end up going through the process until you get to the right one.
Yep.
Well, the original policy that they put in for the funding, I think it was first line, Ilaris, and the NHS funders said no, absolutely not. There's
it's too
drugs out
expensive
there.
to be the first line drug.
Yeah.
I can imagine them being like, wait a minute,
And
you want
because
this
it's so
expensive?
rare,
Yeah.
they didn't have enough data.
And that's true too. Yeah.
So in 2020, we ended up going. I say we because at that point I'd started up the UK charity. I ended up submitting a patient impact report to support the application for funding.
Good, awesome.
And then it got approved. So by July 2020, I'd then switched on to canakinumab Ilaris.
Yep.
And I was having to travel down every 4 weeks from home to the hospital to get the treatment.
Was it
for 2 years?
Was it
during COVID?
Just an injection, or was it an actual infusion then?
No, for Ilaris.
Yeah, because I know for me, it's just an injection. So
yeah, it was just.
So you were traveling that far every 2 weeks for every 4 weeks. You were doing that every 4 weeks. Okay, every 4 weeks for an injection. Just a simple 5-second, takes 15 seconds to stick it in. Done. Now I hope you get it at home.
So then when they were convinced that it was the right drug and it was working and it was worth the money, they were like, right, okay, yes, we're happy for you to have it at home now.
Oh.
So then they started with the delivery process. And then I went up a dose because I was only on 150 milligrams. but then I went up to 300 milligrams.
Wow.
I was still having breakthrough symptoms.
Oh my.
And it was okay for a while, but still things weren't great. And then last year I ended up with Kineret being added on top.
Oh, so you have the daily and the monthly.
Yeah. So, and I still experience a lot of fatigue, chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
I did, so I set the charity up in, well, we started as a Facebook group 2017.
Okay.
We got charity registration by August 2019.
Fantastic.
And at that point, I'd had to come out of work myself because I was just too ill to hold down a job.
Yeah.
So,
I understand.
yeah. I got frustrated that there didn't seem to be any support within the UK as such.
For like disability and things like that, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, well, what's better than setting up a patient organisation to help others when, rather than sitting at home feeling sorry for myself, you know? And yeah, we're still going strong 6 years later. It's hard work, you know.
Yep.
I know earlier it was asked, how do we cope? How does Milena cope?
Yep.
And it's all smiley and supportive, and you know, and it is. It's genuinely, it's the most rewarding thing I think I've ever done in my life, and I love it.
Yeah.
And every single day I'll wake up, even if I'm not feeling well, I'll at least answer one message a day, because then I know that I've done something positive to help other people. But it's hard. You know, when you're going through it yourself and you know how low you can get yourself, and you see somebody else in that situation, as much as you can empathise, it does take a toll advocating for others. And it's also really difficult when you're so passionate about something.
Yep.
I find it particularly difficult, and I'm sure Milena would agree. Sometimes she wants to go, Rachel, just breathe. When I'm advocating for other people, I get very
worked up. I'm sure.
Worked up and frustrated about it.
Oh yeah, I understand, because the system is, you know, with what we've been talking about all yesterday and today. You know, I get so frustrated with some of the things that I'm talking about, but Milena's like, can't talk about those things. There's a way things are done. I know you're frustrated. Just trust me. And I said,
And there's so much red tape every direction that you turn in the advocacy world.
Yeah. Talk about, you know, you brought up Milena. Talk about how you met Milena and got involved with FMF and AID Global as well.
So I found the organisation on Facebook.
Awesome.
And I think I joined, I can't remember if it was the same year or the year before I set something up.
Okay.
I was in other groups as well, but they didn't seem to be as active over here as such. And I found that Milena was very supportive of other advocates within their countries.
Yeah.
And I think I really connected with that because it is quite a lonely journey to go and do something like this on your own, and it's impossible to do it on your own. You have to work in collaboration.
Yeah.
And also, it's about sharing best practice. We talk about medical professionals talking, you know, sharing best practice in how they work. But we as advocates need to be able to share best practice with one another and lean on each other when it gets a bit challenging and
frustrating.
You know, sometimes we'll have a bit of a rough day and we'll be there sharing our own stuff with each other, and it's just, we're here for each other as much as it is about everybody else. Yeah. And I think, you know, Milena, I was really grateful because she brought me into the fold of working with the European Reference Network. And I was going through a pretty challenging time with the advocacy, trying to create a team that actually genuinely cared enough to want a charity to succeed.
Yep.
So, I was grateful that Milena kind of helped get us on that level playing field where we are still involved with the European Reference Network. I work on the transition of care working group. So that's looking at the practice of when children transition over to adult,
Oh, amazing.
which is a really big gap in
Yeah.
a lot of medicine.
Yes.
And it has to be a gradual process. It can't be
I
a quick
can
process.
attest to that. I went from pediatric care, being under the care of my parents, to having to navigate it all myself, and it was very hard. Went through financial
Yeah.
troubles because of it. Went through tons of health issues, no access to medicine at times. It was a rough time. And for me, it was, I got finally involved in the trial for Kineret with NIH over here. So that's how I finally got back to and started becoming educated more on my disease and talking to experts and people who knew somewhat about it. Not to say that the doctors at NIH knew everything, because they were wrong about some stuff for sure. As we know, we are educating doctors a lot more of the time than they're educating us with our disease, with our
Definitely.
diseases. Uh, so yeah, that's amazing, helping, and that's part of the reason I do this, is because I didn't have anybody helping me transition to understand what it was like going from being a kid in school, in primary school and grade school, to going to college or the adulthood. Like my first time at a university, I did terrible, and I didn't understand things like, we grew up in a time when, oh, sure, give your kid a drink, whatever. So I've been drinking. I was drinking alcohol from the time I was like 13 up until I was 30. I mean, when I
Yeah.
stopped finally, really regularly drinking, I'll have a drink every once in a while. But those are the kinds of things I didn't understand. I didn't learn about. I just was trying to live a normal societal life when no one. I shouldn't have gone. I should have gone on disability right away at 18. I should have had that support. That transition would have been very, very helpful. So bravo, for working on that in your country. I hope that every country has some sort of thing like that. Milena, I know that Milena, that's a big thing for Milena too, because of Mark as well. So,
Yes.
I know that Milena, this is the fact that this is a big topic is really great to hear, that people are working on it and focusing on it. So,
So through the reference network, we've just published recommendations across Europe now. It was a paper released December, I think it was, or November. Um, yeah, so all the European countries now have recommendations for how to transition children
amazing,
through that
amazing.
process.
That's amazing.
Because I went through it
Yeah.
myself, and it was the most traumatic thing that I think
Yes.
I'd probably experienced at that age. And I got my diagnosis, I think it was like 4 weeks before my school exams.
Oh my gosh.
So I'd had my diagnosis, I had my school exams. Then pediatrics were saying, well, you're too old for me to keep hold of you anymore.
Yep.
But we've had you for the last 15 years. Now we're going to throw you over to adult care.
And just throw you over there, not even help you
Yeah.
understand what it's like and teach you and give you educational material on
Yeah.
how to navigate it. Nope.
Oh.
Figure it out yourself.
So now I'm going, no, we don't do it like that anymore.
Yeah.
We need a psychologist to help, prepare the person, the young person.
Yeah. That's a
You need to go and
fragile
visit
time.
the
Yeah.
services.
Yes. Yes. Tours, meet the people beforehand, things like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh man, that's incredible. Yeah, it really echoes that whole we are forgotten a lot about.
Yeah.
Um, And so the fact that you're making sure that all the organizations in Europe are making sure that this doesn't happen anymore for your kids, man, can't wait till we get that kind of stuff here in the United States, because
Yeah.
that would be amazing.
I think I think that just speaks testimony to the people involved, though, because
Yes.
we are willing to work with each other in a positive way. And this is, the ultimate thing is it's patients' lives that we are dealing with.
Yep.
And if we don't do something, nothing's going to change. Research can't happen without us because they need us to be able to do the research. So researchers need to involve the patients, patient advocates. New treatments, the whole process, the delivery of it, what Monica was saying about only having a little bit of the Ilaris out of the bottle and then the rest of it gets thrown away.
Yeah.
Where is the patient consultation about that specific issue?
Yeah. Very true.
Patients need to be included in every single process of their care.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that too, because they do market research for so many products. For movies, TV shows, shampoos, foods, but not for medicines. They test them, they do trials, sure, but that's just the effects of the medicine. That's not the, the logical, commonsensical consumer side of it.
It's interesting because just going away from autoinflammatory completely for a minute, there was a group of parents up in Scotland that were struggling with their children with a metabolic condition.
Okay.
And because MKD's got part of a metabolic issue going on, so I kind of connected that way through with them. And they heavily rely on Dexcom insulin readers to measure blood sugar levels in their children, and it links to their phones.
Yep.
But the actual marketing of the product, the technology of it, is marketed at diabetics.
Yes.
So the NHS on that basis will only fund for diabetics. So they weren't funding for the storage disorders. And the company, like Dexcom or whatever, I'm not just picking on one particular company, but they couldn't understand why it was the case. And I said, because you're only marketing the product for one specific reason, and that is for diabetics. If you market it as a generalist, this is to measure blood sugars in XYZ conditions as a whole, then you're more likely. And I thought, why am I doing all this for free? I could have got money out of doing that for the charity.
Because you
that's
care.
An afterthought,
Yeah, it's an afterthought. But at the same time, the priority is the patients. Exactly.
Exactly. That's what it's always about.
Yes.
So that now they've probably gone away and remarketed the whole brand and got more money, but hey.
But hey, at least now the patients that need it, that aren't just diabetics, are getting the sensors.
Yeah.
And the monitors. So that's incredible. Just being able to hear that, there's other Melenas out there.
Yes, not quite as international as Milena.
No, Milena is.
Milena.
Oh my gosh, Milena is.
I don't, honestly.
Yeah.
I struggle to keep up with the UK, let alone anything else.
Yeah. So Milena is amazing. FMF&ID Global is amazing, which is why we're here raising money for FMF&ID Global Association. Yesterday was Rare Disease Day. We're here with Rachel from the UK who has MKD. And for those of you who don't know what MKD is, it might have been HID. It used to be called HIDS. And if you don't know HIDS, what HIDS is, go to the FMFNAID Global Association website, go to the diseases section, and it's all the information there that you need there for that. Thank you so much for speaking with us today and coming on while you're not feeling well. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about, bring up?
I'll just pick up on the difference between the MKD and why we're moving away from HIDS now.
That's interesting.
So HIDS stands for hyper IgD syndrome, which was first detected in 1984.
Yep.
So that's what the condition was originally known as, and then along came more research, and the gene was studied and detected for hyper IgD syndrome. But what they discovered was that there was HIDS as the mild cases and mevalonic aciduria as the severe end of the cases of MKD. And there was a reference of two, it felt like there was a reference of two separate conditions, but yet it was the same gene.
Huh.
And now when we study the condition as a whole with the involvement of the gene, it's very clear that MKD is just a spectrum of severe or mild.
Yeah.
Sure. I was first thought of being mild as a child because I had no cognitive issues, developmental delay as such. But then you look back at my notes and I went to speech and language therapy.
Yeah.
And and my point is that it's all one gene affected. It's mevalonate kinase deficiency. People can be at one end or the other end of the spectrum, but at the end of the day, it's still the same condition.
Yep.
And we need to take away this perception of, well, so-and-so has it worse than you do.
Yeah, agreed.
So, because every person's battle is their own battle.
Yes.
And there's no competition between who's got it worse than another person. So let's just call it the same thing.
Yeah.
Treat it as the same thing.
Agreed.
Yeah. I just thought it was important to cover it really because I know HIDS is still used out there, but I've been working with a researcher recently over in the States at Philadelphia, and he absolutely agrees and has supported me wholeheartedly with the whole HIDS.
Yeah, I like the mentality of why. I do, and so it definitely is a very good reason. If they were using two different names for different spectrums of the same condition, makes it very confusing. So I definitely understand why it is. And there's lots of things like that in the world where eventually it'll all transition to the last one. So thank you for that explanation. That's a fantastic explanation. And so hopefully now everybody out there understands why and can get behind that, because you're right. No person's battle is worse than the others. It's a battle, no matter what. And it's a war. And we need to... Sure, someone's situation can be worse, socially or economically or whatever, but physically and mentally, they're still going through that same battle and that same war. So that's a very, very good point, Rachel. So thank you very much. Get yourself some rest.
Thank you.
And feel better. And folks, go check out. Is there a website for the organization, or is it just on Facebook?
Yeah, it's www.raccuk.com.
raccuk.com. Folks, go check it out there. raccuk.com, folks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel, and you have a good rest of your weekend and hope you feel better.
Okay. Take care, Chris.
Take care. Yep. Bye. All right. Oh, need to bring that up. Did I close it? I did. Whoops. All right, we'll have to edit this part of the video as I bring this up. Sorry if there were any audio issues too. The mixer's doing some weird stuff, and I just realized it in the middle of it. So if she was like double echoing or something, it won't be too bad because she didn't sound too bad. But anyway, so let me get back to what I'm going to record now. And all right, well, that was Rachel, who has MKD and helps run a patient-run auto-inflammatory organization in the UK. So definitely go check out the website, www.raccuk.com. That link will be in the description. Make sure you go check out FMF and AID Global as well. That they could be found via the donation page. So go there first. That link is in the description. Fundraiser page on Streamlabs Charity. And we are here on a Rare Disease Day. Streamathon Rare Disease Day was February 28th. So thank you all for watching this interview with Rachel. And now back to our regularly scheduled program.